everyone, and welcome to this session, which is the Australian Hydrogen Innovation Session. Thank you for coming. There's a lot of competition for events, a lot of speakers, a lot of people to talk to, so we really appreciate that you've carved out some time in your morning to attend this session, which is for the next 45 minutes. And I think it's going to be a bit rather exciting. It is designed to whet your appetite in terms of the thriving world of clean tech down under. My name is Anna Freeman and I am the Policy Director for Decarbonisation at the Clean Energy Council, which is the peak body for the renewable energy sector in Australia. We represent over 1,000 member companies across the clean energy value chain in Australia, so a real thrill to be here. Australia has got a very big delegation again this year, which I think really underlines the importance which we are placing on hydrogen in Australia, and hopefully we'll have some exciting news to talk about in the next half an hour. Our Federal Treasurer in Australia has just taken to the podium in the Parliament and is about to deliver the Australian federal budget, in which we have very big expectations for a future made in Australia, a clean energy future made in Australia. Well, it's true, Australia doesn't only have the best confluence of wind and solar resources in the world. We also have a thriving ecosystem of R&D and some cracking new technology solutions being commercialised as we speak. And today we're going to offer you a little bit of a taste, a mini smorgasbord of some of the stuff that's going on at the moment, and it is a big week for clean tech in Australia. Some of you may be aware that one of our startups in Australia, a spin-off out of the regional University of Wollongong, named HySATA, has just done the biggest Series B capital raise of any in Australian clean tech history, 110 million US dollars of capital raise, and that's, I think, got everybody excited, and I think we'll have a talk about that in a moment. As I mentioned, we've got a big week with the federal budget this week, but more on that in a moment. Now, I'm hoping that it's not just the Australians in the audience that have clocked the reference to green and gold in the title. These are, of course, our national colours in which we compete in international sporting contests. And obviously, you will see the poetry here in terms of being emblematic of the mission to create wealth from our green, clean energy future. We are, of course, at the dawn of a new era for economic development, one that is based on clean energy rather than fossil fuels, and that is a fairly historic shift for a country whose second and third largest exports are LNG, followed by coal. So it's a pretty transformational vision in terms of what hydrogen can do in Australia. Innovation, of course, is going to be critical to the acceleration of the scale-up of the hydrogen sector in Australia and our ability to move down that cost curve. And so I am delighted to be able to host this discussion here today with some of the people at the centre of Australia's hydrogen innovation ecosystem, I would say. So without further ado, let me introduce our panel. To my immediate left is the legendary Dr. Patrick Hartley, the leader of the hydrogen industry mission for CSIRO, the CSIRO, Australia's National Science Agency, whose work has really helped to inform and shape the hydrogen vision in Australia. And I think you started work on that in about 2017, 2018, Patrick. So you've been there since the dawn of this next era of the hydrogen vision in the energy economy. Next to Patrick is Dr. Jihan Kanga, a materials scientist from the University of Sydney. I think I've got that right, have I? Materials scientist.
Yeah.
Who has now established an exciting new company involved in hydrogen storage named Rux Energy, and they're really aiming to dramatically drive down the cost of hydrogen storage, which I think is one of the big innovation challenges that we still have. Next to Jihan is Dr. Stephen Percy, a Senior Research Fellow at the Victorian Hydrogen Hub. Victorian Hydrogen Hub at Swinburne University in Melbourne, and now also an entrepreneur in his own right as CEO of Vireo Energy, a startup which is supplying operational and control software for hydrogen facilities. And finally, at the end, but not the least, I promise, Cam, is Cameron Smith, CEO of Fortescue Fortescue Hydrogen Systems, which is the division of Fortescue, who I think is a name that will be known to many, which is shortly to begin manufacturing its own range of electrolyzers. They have just opened a new electrolyser manufacturing facility in Queensland. So a very warm welcome to all of our panellists.
Thanks, Anna.
Now, I'm going to start with you, Patrick. You have been very much at the centre of this, new development of the hydrogen sector over the last 5 years. And I mentioned that there's been a palpable buzz around the industry and around the Australian delegation in response very much to the success that we've seen with HySARTA in the last week. What sort of lift does that success give to the R&D and world in Australia? And how would you characterise innovation and the innovation ecosystem in Australia at the moment?
Yeah, look, it's exciting times. I think I look back to when we were first doing our national hydrogen roadmap back in 2017, and we were kind of out there waving the flag for hydrogen, and now it's everywhere. And this is proof of concept for that. I think investments in companies like HySARTA demonstrate that innovation can leave our university system, leave the R&D environment, and move across that technology valley of death with substantial investment, and get into commercial reality and hopefully make a big difference globally to the cost of hydrogen production, etc. So, and I think what that does is it provides certainty that Australia can do this, and encourages what is actually a burgeoning startup environment or ecosystem in Australia to keep going and keep going with innovations, including some of our own. So we're actively spinning off companies in the hydrogen space as well. And actually, if you go back to the very beginning of this sort of commercialisation journey for Australian hydrogen tech, in the recent era at least, it was a membrane technology that CSIRO developed. It was actually invested in by Cameron's company that sort of got that commercialisation message realised for the first time. So it's been exciting to watch. There is enormous activity in Australia. I think we probably need to tell our stories better because they're quite often hidden away in different places, and we're doing a lot of work on knowledge sharing to encourage that storytelling around the hydrogen industry. But yeah, no, it's growing pace, growing momentum, and the HySARTA example is a great case study that will encourage more to be involved.
And I think one of the challenges is also for Australia then to be able to retain that IP and really leverage it within the Australian market.
Yeah, absolutely right. So, I think we're going to talk about international collaboration later, but Australia's a long way away from a lot of the big markets for Australia. So we have to find ways of developing the tech and then realising the benefit in both where the markets are and where back in Australia. So we're actively sort of looking at those international collaboration models to see how that can be done.
All right. Now you are the head of CSIRO, a National Science Agency's hydrogen industry mission. What is that, and what are you doing?
Yeah, it's a pretty, so CSIRO, for those who don't know, we're the national research agency in Australia. So we cover basically all of the research that's not nuclear and defence related in Australia, and my job is fairly straightforward. I have to roam across our organisation, roam across our partnerships with government and industry to bring everything we can to support the development of the hydrogen industry in Australia. It is a mission to develop Australia's hydrogen industry and support that. So and we do that in a range of different ways. I can go into some of the details if you like. I mentioned knowledge sharing. Obviously, we're doing technology development. We're actually deploying demonstration projects. We've just deployed a hydrogen refueler at one of our sites, we work a lot with governments on their strategies and also supporting international collaboration.
Yeah, fantastic. I think you've really done an important role in sort of informing the general knowledge base in Australia in terms of the opportunity.
That knowledge sharing piece, it was probably the one we really was not our most successful early win, really, because everyone really valued that.
All right, well, let's move now to Jihan. So tell us about Rux Energy, essentially, and what it is that you've set out to solve and what you're currently doing.
Yeah, thanks, Anna. So Rux Energy, we have breakthrough materials called metal organic frameworks. These are solvents or physisorption materials that fill the void of a tank and make dispatchable tanks much more efficient. So ambient temperature systems twice as efficient, and LNG-like systems 4.5 times more energy dense than the same system if it were, if it didn't have the MOF in it. And so, for the LNG style system, it's getting liquid-like densities, but at energy efficiencies that are 10 times more lower. And so if you're only getting a 3% loss, then you versus a 30% loss or more than that, then all of that gain can then be passed down to the consumer, and then you can get a lower cost of storage and distribution. Now, I think the big challenge is that the distribution cost, it doesn't matter if you can manufacture hydrogen for $1 per kilo, if you can't get it off the farm or off the island, off Australia and to where it's needed, big industrial hubs, because the storage is such a challenge. And obviously there's many different ways that we can do it, and there's, we can look at chemical sources, but for us, if we can get the physical storage of hydrogen much more efficient and much more cost efficient, not just energy efficient, but cost efficient, then we'll actually start to see a lot of switching behavior. And we're starting to see that in some of our sort of ecosystem trials that we're launching in the UK and in Australia for the construction power industry.
All right, can I just ask the AV desk to please turn up the sound a little bit in the foldbacks, because I can't hear very well. Jihan, can you just explain for someone who don't know, and I say this as a person who only learnt this term in the last few weeks, a MOF, a metal organic framework. What is it? Why does it matter?
Yeah, so MOFs are a field of materials, very, very new field, where you have metal ions connected by big ligands. So these ligands create, therefore, a pore space. You can think of it like under a scanning electron microscope. It might look like a scaffolding structure with nodes and bridges, and that creates a big surface area. And our materials have several football fields worth of surface area for every gram of material. And we can tune the surface area chemistry for different kinds of gases or do catalytic chemistry. There are companies around the world that are looking at it for direct air carbon capture, and they've created tunable MOFs for carbon. We've created selective MOFs for hydrogen, and that's our specialty. The other specialties that we do, we make these metal organic frameworks very, very low cost using a green chemistry, green synthesis. So all of our materials are manufactured in a water-dominant synthesis, and with very, very low waste. So that also lowers the cost of the material, it lowers the cost for the total system. We're also investing in Type 5 carbon composite tanks, and so these are next generation composite tanks that are also going to lower the cost of the total system, and we'll be able to then deliver a system-wide energy efficiency and lower cost of hydrogen stored and distributed.
All right, so just to sort of join the dots here, if you can more efficiently store the hydrogen, does this do away with the need for carriers?
No,
are we talking about not needing ammonia as a carrier and recracking and those sorts of things on the basis that you could store greater amounts more efficiently? Or
yeah, I think we have
different applications.
Principle of like horses for courses.
Right.
So ammonia is needed. There's $100 billion of ammonia that is grey ammonia, and that needs to be decarbonized, and we need to do that as quickly as possible. So all of the ammonia investments that are out there have a major purpose to displace the grey ammonia, which is very, very carbon intensive. As a fuel, that's obviously, ammonia can be used as a fuel, but it's more challenging. Actually, Fortescue has an amazing piece of kit. They've converted a flatbed marine vessel that's parked in Singapore at the moment, and that runs on an ammonia diesel mix. And I highly recommend if you go to Singapore to go onto the vessel and look at how they've done it, because it shows what's possible. Right?
Some people might have seen it at COP, if you're at COP in Dubai
that's right, yeah.
November, December.
But pure hydrogen also has a role to play, and for us, we see the role to play in maritime vessels, tugboats, for underdeck sort of power systems for trucks, for trains, and we play a special role in because we're both solving the gravimetric and the volumetric challenge for aviation, and so that's a very big market for us, and also for racing. And so we're actually pulling together a consortium to look at development of a hydrogen Le Mans racer. It will be the first hydrogen Le Mans racer, and, pulling the teams together. And so that's the kind of work that that's the space that we play based in. And again, there's going to be other solutions, other mechanisms that are relevant for their specific use cases, and we encourage that because we need every technology thrown at the wall and see what sticks, because we don't have a lot of time left in the energy transition.
I'm just going to put in a personal vote for decarbonising aviation before you work out Formula One, if that's all right. But
aviation is obviously 3% of the world's emissions. So.
All right. So in terms of key applications, we're talking about sort of the maritime sector, and aviation as being leading applications.
Yeah, I think maritime is a much bigger first mover for us because there's more coordination and collaboration happening in the maritime space, and heavy rail is a very, very big user of diesel. And so we see those markets as being, they're very collaborative. We see we can do a lot of deep decarbonisation very, very quickly. Trucking, we'd love to be able to participate in that market, but there's a lot of other different kinds of solutions that are competing, and there's also not a lot of agreement around standards and regulatory aspects, refueling. And so all of that disagreement is slowing down the whole market deployment of any kind of zero emissions option, whether it's batteries or whether it's hydrogen or a bit of both or some other kinds of power fuels. So I think we see marine as being a very, very big player early in the energy transition.
Yeah, fantastic. 2 last quick fire questions. Scale, can you achieve it with the technology?
Yeah, so MOFs are effectively infinitely scalable, especially when you bring the cost down. You can almost think of these materials as like advanced value-added metals, or sort of because the costs are in the sort of the tens of percentage points above the sort of the base metal cost, for the very, very low cost, and we can make these at the kind of hundreds of thousands of ton scale. But I think with any kind of system, the scalability is all about sort of the end user and what they actually want. And I think there's a lot of other technologies that perhaps at a super giga scale might be much more efficient for them, but then they can't actually get to the small scale. And
all right.
We want to play in that SME space.
Last question, quick fire answer. Duration of storage. How long can you store it for?
Yeah, so the ambient temperature systems are long duration storage. You can leave them in the tank forever and they'll stay there. The cooled system, the LNG systems, they'll have a dormancy of about 20 to 25 days. So that's enough for sort of a lot of international shipping routes.
Yep.
To run unpowered. So we'll be able to sort of cover a lot of bases that way.
All right, fantastic. We'll open the floor a little bit later if anyone's got any follow-up questions. But now let's move to Stephen Percy, researcher, academic, and now the owner and founder of a new company that is developing software systems for the strategic operation of hydrogen facilities. Stephen, why does this matter?
Yeah, so...
And what is it that your product does?
Okay, so to operate a hydrogen production facility, there's lots of sensitivities around when you operate it, what level of set point you provide to an electrolyzer system, whether you put it down to its minimum operating point or if you switch it off. And these lead to how much it costs to deliver hydrogen. So what we have developed is one of the first core capabilities our company developed was critical forecasting associated with operating a hydrogen plant. So that's the renewables availability, whether that's through a PPA or on-site renewables, which a lot of the projects in Australia will have on-site renewables. And also the electricity spot pricing associated with sourcing energy from the grid. So we take these critical forecasts. Another forecast we do is the associated hydrogen storage capacity. Hydrogen storage is dependent on the temperature of the tank. If it's in the sun, that storage level can actually reduce. So we model all these aspects around the system. We then use a digital twin of the electrolyzer plant, using these forecasts, looking at the offtake schedule for a particular hydrogen project, So that could be tube trailer pickups, the time those tube trailers are arriving to site, or if it's an ammonia facility, the amount of hydrogen that needs to be delivered at a constant rate from the facility. So we consider all these aspects. We use our digital twin to make operational decisions for the electrolyzer plant. And all those operational decisions are based around delivering hydrogen at the lowest possible cost and ensuring that the offtakes from a particular facility are delivered on time and reliably. In that, we consider also the associated degradation from a particular control decision on the electrolyzer plant and what that will do to the associated lifetime. So to switch off, it has to be switching off to avoid associated high electricity pricing. And we weigh that up using our forecasts and make that control decision for the electrolyzer plant. So the whole goal of this is basically to automate how you operate an electrolyzer, leading to lowest costs and reliable delivery.
All right, I've got two questions for you. First of all, to what degree did the Australian experience of the Australian electricity market in some ways inform the development of this product?
Yeah, so my background, my PhD was actually in operating residential microgrid systems. And I've taken some of the capability that I developed during my PhD, the forecasting associated with that, and I've worked for years in wholesale electricity spot markets, which has allowed us to develop a very, very accurate spot market price forecast model that is applied across the eastern states of Australia. We also have the ability to swap that out with European models and European market pricing, which allows us to operate that. But yeah, all my background in research, and I used to work at the CSIRO as well. My PhD was in collaboration with CSIRO, so all that experience, also my experience in the hydrogen sector has allowed me to develop this tool, or with the team to develop this tool, which the whole goal is to help electrolyzer operators reduce their costs. Yep.
So you've been in Europe for the last month or so,
Yep.
I think doing a bit of market sounding.
Yep.
What's the general appetite, interest and reception that you're getting?
Yeah, so I was fortunate enough to spend pretty much a full day at the Wunsiedel electrolyzer facility in Bavaria. I actually had 2 visits there. But that day I was able to sit down with the operator of that facility, understanding their insights on operating that plant and also what's required in actually delivering hydrogen to demand. And they have tube trailer pickups. They basically, the insights there, they want to automate these facilities, and it's critical that these, that the offtake is delivered. And we do this at the lowest possible cost, but it's a critical aspect in delivering hydrogen. And those decisions, they need to not degrade your electrolyzer. So we help with that, and so there's definitely an appetite, and we're not just limited. I think sometimes we hear, being an Australian company, we can do business also with European companies. So we're not just limited to providing our solution in Australia. All this capability can be provided anywhere, basically in the world, Europe, USA, and so forth. Yep.
Fantastic. Well, hopefully there'll be plenty of opportunities in Australia to test out your product on our home ground as a result of what's currently being announced by the government as we speak. Let's move now to Cameron Smith, CEO of Fortescue Hydrogen Systems. Welcome, Cam. Sorry, last but not least. Fortescue is, of course, a very large iron ore miner in Australia, but in 2020 its chairman announced a very big push into green energy commodities, particularly hydrogen and its derivatives. But Cam is spearheading a completely new division of the organisation, although I think it's been going for a few years now, Cam, but this is a new venture into being an OEM, a producer of electrolyzers, and you've just opened your own electrolyzer manufacturing facility in Gladstone, in Queensland. Tell us about it, and most intriguingly, Why are you becoming an OEM? Why does that matter? Is this just about shoring up supply chains for your own massive ambitions, or is there something else at play?
Yeah, thanks, Anna. And that's I guess, a good way to put it. You know, the start of this journey for us to go into the electrolyser business was, in honesty, it was really about surety of supply. We had, and we still have, huge ambitions globally to ensure that we can provide green hydrogen for anyone who wants to go green, and make sure, most importantly, that we provide that green hydrogen at a cost position that's economic for the projects. What we realised early on was that there was really significant capability. We did have our partnerships with the CSIRO, and the innovation across Australia really lends itself to working together with those other organisations and produce these systems. What our chairman and the company asked us at the time was to make sure we could provide market competitive electrolyser solutions that would be available for our projects, and naturally for anybody else who wants those projects or wants to build projects for green hydrogen globally. So that's, I guess, where the journey started. We've acquired some really significant expertise along the way, including an in-house membrane capability based out of Delaware in the US, which is sort of ground zero for molecular chemistry around, you know, with all the majors, the Gores, the Chemours, the Dow Chemical, etc. They provide those membranes across to us in Australia, and then we were able to do a lot of the specifics and the real detailed work around that secret sauce in Australia. And a lot of that work, for example, around the chemistries and the inks that we use, for example, that all happens in Australia, in Perth. We do it in partnership with local industry and with our local research organisations. And that's given us a position where we have world-leading results on our 1 megawatt PEM stack. And that's now coming out of our facility across in Gladstone, where, again, incredible support from the Queensland and the federal government. That facility opened last month. It's got a 2 gigawatt nameplate capacity, and we're able to produce, in fact, in excess of that capacity.
Are you already producing? Have you already got production lines working?
It is in operation today. The first orders are from an internal project, and this has just been a fantastic example coming here to Rotterdam. The interest in a product that's backed by a large industrial company like Fortescue, the fact that we have got a test bed in our own decarbonisation journey, and the fact that we're able to produce in the quantums and with a global supply chain has really made that attractive, and we've seen that here in Rotterdam this year.
All right, you were explaining to me recently that there's quite a bit of internal competition for your product, so no pressure or anything, but those that are developing projects across the business internationally would expect to see that you can produce an electrolyser that is going to deliver the outcomes that they need. They're not required to use a Fortescue electrolyser. How does that work?
Well, I mean, that goes really to the core of us as a business. You know, Fortescue has been for many years the lowest cost producer of iron ore in the world. And that's by making sure that every single part of the value chain is on the table to make sure we really drive those costs down.
Yeah.
My job is, you know, I can't ask my projects to buy electrolysers from me just because we both wear a green circle. They should buy our product because it's the best in the world and it's the best fit for their projects. You know, that's a philosophy we've had from the start. We've had incredible feedback from our projects, but electrolysers and the technology, there is a level of nascency, and a different product will be a different fit for a different project, and a lot of that comes back to the power source. You know, I really like the way, you know, Jihan sort of explained there. Every part of this value chain becomes important. You know, we are focused on the hydrogen production system, but your ability to then compress it, your ability to store it effectively, how close your customer is to the location where you need it. Every one of these components comes into play, and the energy source and the technology that we get, you know, from a company like Vireo, where we manage the major input, which is obviously the electricity cost. These are so critical to the selection of the final product and technology you need. So we need to ensure that our projects are successful in their own right. We obviously work very closely with our internal teams to make sure that our product is fit for purpose and works for their projects, but they absolutely have no obligation to do that. They need to buy the best solution for the project that they're putting on the ground. I need to provide the best solutions for them, and that's a really great competitive tension that we embrace within the company.
All right, now it's a PEM electrolyser factory. Have you made the decision at Fortescue that is the solution?
Absolutely not. But look, the reality is, again, we see this as nascent. We have an alkaline product. which will be commercial at the end of this year. We have an anion exchange membrane product, which will be commercial in the middle of next year. The truth is, it's too early to say. You know, we are a strong believer that we are technology agnostic today. What we need is a range of products that can solve our customers' problems. That'll be based on the location, the market conditions, the offtake requirement, the power profile, etc. So our first product to market is the PEM product. It'll be closely followed by our alkaline and our AEM. But again, there's no reason that solid oxide, we work with our research organisations to look at what the next generation of technology is. And the truth is, at this point, it's way too early in the hydrogen journey to make a call on one winning technology. We honestly believe we need all of these organisations, everybody who wants to create economic green hydrogen, to be putting their effort into making sure we do that at the lowest cost possible. The technology is not what matters, it's making sure we've got the right solution for the projects on the ground.
Important words. Now, I will at this point open up if there are any questions. So if there are, I think you need to put your hand up and there will be a runner with a microphone. I'll keep a watching brief on that. So if there's any questions, we've got a question in the front row already. Excellent. Just here, sorry. Could you please introduce yourself?
Hi, Ken Rump from AIB Goodbody. I'm a financial analyst covering the sector. Firstly, thanks for the presentation. Hope you can hear. A couple of questions. To Steve, I'm just interested in a sense, as a sort of service provider and optimizer to sort of projects. To what extent have they failed to kind of explore all the opportunities they could have? Because this feels like why wouldn't you have done it? Or on the other hand, what are the opportunities to sort of optimize what is a complex and sort of multi-factor process? It seemed like a very interesting idea. I'm just curious to what extent, I read a report from Shell where they were running an electrolyzer and, discovering all kinds of things about electricity prices and when it made sense to run it and so on, and the effect that had on the PEM electrolyzer. And if I can shall I do a second question in a minute to Cam, or do it now?
I'm struggling to hear you, I'm sorry. What was that?
Okay. For Cameron...
I'll let Steve answer,
Steve,
and then we can go with the numbers. Okay.
It was a little bit hard to hear, but I think I got the question. So it's around what extent do we optimize over the process of the electrolyzer plant? And we see, the technology is new and there's going to be different technologies used in different projects that we'll be involved in. We see a very important part of that process in the data capture, the data analytics, the detailed modeling that we use that data for. And we're building capability in that to enhance basically how we operate that facility and the sort of decisions. So degradation, for example, is critical, and we don't really know how these electrolyzers are going to degrade. And we see a critical aspect in our solution, which is the monitoring, the measurement, the verification on electrolyzer performance, and how that goes into how we actually operate these electrolyzers. I hope that answers the question. Yep.
Anything to add? No.
Right.
No. Okay.
Hopefully you can read my lips.
Apologies. It's just the microphone for the floor was a little bit hard to hear.
Yeah.
All right.
The two questions were, if there's a quick answer, what's different about what you're doing from what other PEM manufacturers are doing? And the other one is kind of related, which is, what are the advantages of starting now, building on everything that's gone before, and not having to reinvent the wheel? Thanks.
Yeah, great question. So for those that couldn't hear, it was what's the difference with us as an OEM provider, and then the second part is what are the advantages having started now? Look, very simply, we do have points of difference. The absolute vertical integration is a point of difference. We own the membrane production, we own the ink recipes, we own the application of that ink onto the CCMs and then the membrane electrode assemblies. And we own all of the component parts that go into our stacks. So we're not reliant on somebody else. If somebody else wants to develop a technology or make a change, or they have an issue with supply chain, we don't. We own it and we manage it. Probably what goes hand in hand is that we had a very clear, very, very large scale vision from day one. We didn't start on a 1 kilowatt stack to move into a 50 to 100 we started as a minimum building block of a 1 megawatt stack with an intention of deploying these in the hundreds of megawatts at a time. So it gave us a very unique perspective on making sure that we looked at each of those major components and optimising not just the stack itself, but in particular the balance of system, to make sure that we were able to, from the very start, optimise those systems at the industrial scale and make sure that that allows us to keep the per megawatt cost down for the customers. Look, in terms of starting now, it's very simple. We're already too late. You know, the reality is hydrogen can provide a massive molecular solution to a huge number of energy and heat needs globally. It's an area which naturally has not been used extensively so far due to costs. Our opportunity is that we develop the supply chains now, we develop scale now, and we start that journey down the cost curve before, you know, the fast followers per se. So look, we've had an incredible experience. What we've learnt in the last 2 years through, to be quite honest, a lot of failures has meant we've learnt faster than a lot of others, and they're going to have to learn those lessons themselves. So we've really moved very, very quickly, and the third party, the verified results on our systems demonstrate that we have learnt fast and we're able to create that value for our customers, whether they be internal or external, from the very start.
All right, well, we might just move on. We've only got 8 minutes left and I've still got a few questions. So I wanted to go to the question of collaboration. Jihan, I've read something that says that you have dozens of collaborations and partnerships. What are they for, and how are you using them to accelerate what you're doing?
Yeah, so we're a small startup. I mean, this time last year we were 5 people, and we're now 25 people this year. So growing very quickly, but in order to deliver the big systems, we need partners, right? So we partner, and that gives us speed. We can announce we've just launched a project with the Freeport East, and the teams are here, called HiZem, and that's with a number of maritime partners to do decarbonisation of tugboats and other. And
did you say tugboats?
Tugboats, yeah. And tugboats, they're a really nice representation because they're small, but they're sort of nuggety, and they're
mighty.
Really powerful, and they pull
mighty.
the big ships around, and that's kind of like us. Like, we're small, we want to help pull the maritime industry into the decarbonised future.
The metaphor is wonderful. I love it.
Yeah, and it's a really good example. It's got research partners, it's got National Composite Centre. They've got 2 Australian research partners that are involved, Deakin and UNSW, and there's about 8 industry partners in sort of 6 in the UK and 2 in Australia, and it's a really good example of how these projects can sort of really catapult multiple technologies, not just our storage technology, but also Steamology's really high efficiency closed loop hydrogen turbines, and that's what we want, right? We want to see lots of innovations being tested together, because they've got to talk to each other. We need to make sure that they're really efficient as they talk to each other. We've got to make sure that the balance of plants are really efficient and low cost. So if we can work together, we're actually going to solve each other's problems much faster. So I mean, that's just a little example, but we've got about 6 projects like that around the world, and we're continuing to build these projects. So if people are wanting to partner around their particular decarbonisation needs, then let's talk, because we want to work fast.
Come and hang around the Australia Pavilion for the rest of the day. Patrick Hartley, collaboration is also a very important theme with everything that you're doing. What do you see as being the major opportunities for advancements, leveraging those collaboration opportunities?
Sure. Yeah, so I should just say as well, part of what we're doing here in Rotterdam is we've actually brought a delegation of researchers from across Australia's research sector to come and see what's going on here and around the world. So we see obviously collaboration in research as being absolutely critical. I mean, it's in researchers' DNA to collaborate internationally, and the reason they collaborate is obviously to try and work together to accelerate faster rather than just competing. I think what we found through a lot of delegations to different countries, we've done, this will be our 9th delegation in the last couple of years, two different countries. We found there are strengths in countries that align very well in specific areas with what Australia is trying to do. So what we're trying to do is enable collaborations in things like, if you go, going to Korea, we learned a lot about ammonia. There's a lot of interest in my organisation, but in Australia more generally, about using ammonia as an export vector. So there's a great opportunity to combine efforts in that space with researchers in that country. In other areas, like I was just in the US last week, huge amount of work going on in liquid hydrogen in the US, and so I think collaborations in that space where it makes sense for Australia are going to be very important. A lot of this is about making sure that we can. I guess fulfill our ambitions in Australia through bringing the best research collaborations together internationally and hopefully accelerating the journey for everyone.
And I think that's one of the ways that we can really sort of drive the efficiency of the sector and take advantage of the big vision that there is now in Australia for. Many of you will have heard about the renewable energy superpower and Australia's aspirations to be a renewable energy superpower. I can reveal, in case you haven't already seen it on your social media feed in the last half an hour, but our Treasurer has just announced a $2 Australian, so I think it's about $1.30 US per kilogram hydrogen production tax credit for hydrogen projects in Australia from 2027 onwards, so for a 10-year period for projects over, I think it's 10 megawatts. So that's incredibly exciting. Quick reactions, please, from the panellists. I mean, this is, in some respects, Australia's answer to the Inflation Reduction Act and the clean energy arms race that's underway. We've been waiting for this. We've been campaigning for this for a while. Cameron Smith, I'll go to you first quickly.
Look, first reaction is that's outstanding. The reality is there is a certain number of projects who may not have been economic or couldn't reach FID, and there should be, go a long way to supporting some of those extra projects. We have got to start. We've got to get a hydrogen economy established. We have more renewable energy in sun and wind than any other country on the planet. We need to make sure we turn that into molecules that we can use in different areas of the energy matrix. And it's a fantastic announcement. I'm really pleased to hear that. It'd be fantastic if it was with $4 or $5, but let's start with $2 and we'll see what we get next year.
Patrick Hartley, your reaction, is this going to be the difference? Is this going to get us started?
It certainly is. I think there is a huge pipeline of projects in Australia where the business case is really tough, and so something like this transforms the business case. It makes it viable to get some of these, especially these really large projects, which is what the world really needs. I think this will go a long way to getting us actually building those projects.
Jihan and Stephen?
I think it's outstanding. I mean, as I said, and I'm thrilled. I think there are a whole lot of projects actually in the sort of the SME space that are going to launch ahead as a result of this, particularly for like construction power and remote community where, its cost is everything. And if we can get that cost down with the subsidies, that's fantastic and really exciting.
Yeah, I think this sort of policy doesn't just support the developers, it also supports the wider industry. It gives certainty
the ecosystem.
Yep, certainty to the technology providers, to the researchers, to the companies and startups to actually innovate and help support the industry. So, I think it's great.
Well, on that bright note, thank you everyone for joining us. I think you can find most of the panellists here today somewhere at either Australia Pavilion, or I think Fortescue's got its own pavilion here as well, or tackle us at the end of the stage. But I think we can go out on a bright note and really celebrate tonight. Looking forward to a drink to celebrate that big victory. So thank you everyone for your attention.
Thanks for your time. Thanks, Anna.